Welcome back to Arya's journey. This is week 2. I did leave in the slide regarding the history and purpose of this vlog. I do recommend checking out our first video as well as my why video just to gather more background, because I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time rehashing things that we've already discussed. This week I worked with her 4 times. We did 2 sessions in a line, and then I moved on to a bodywork session where I just did massage, and then followed by 2 more days of sessions. So she did have a little bit of a break in between. Otherwise, we were very consistent all the way through. With these sessions, similar to last week, I did add in a few new exercises that you will notice. So again, beginning of every session, we're checking in, testing mobility, seeing where she is at the start of the day. From there, we're doing a good little warm-up that's about 5 minutes, and then moving on to the meat of our sessions. So we have the ground pulls with the fan pattern, which again we saw last week. I added in long trotting. A lot of this long trotting I am doing in between these specific exercises. It's a good way to add some extra energy into our sessions, kind of break up the pull work because it's not really her favorite. And then it's also encouraging her to just stretch out. A lot of what she struggles with is the mobility and really reaching out. So spending some time long trotting in between these patterns really helps mobilize her and working more on those straight lines. I do have a small clip in here of us doing this. However, I'm taking up the whole arena, so it's hard to really demonstrate from the videos that I do. So it's very, very brief. And I'll go over that a little bit more later on. We do also do the ground pulls with the snake variation again. I added in a stretch and climb through. It'll make more sense once I get to that portion. And then also a serpentine across a ditch. This work was getting us out of the arena altogether, getting out, seeing things again. I like to use a lot of variation, keep things fresh. On to the ground pulls with the fan variation. Again, just as a quick recap, the poles that are raised or to the closest on the inside, those are about 1 foot apart, and the outside distance is about 4.5 feet or so. So the whole point of this is to be able to variation of going to the inside where they've got to step each step over a pole, and then towards the outside, it actually ends up being 2 steps between each pole. And the way I broke this up this time is I have each session broken out. I have 3 sessions shown in total. We did do 4 sessions. I just did not video the 4th session. And in these videos, you will notice this first session, I ended up going ahead and putting the poles on the ground. They are not raised. The distance is still the same. However, I took out the elevation portion of it. She was really struggling today during this session. So I decided to bring it down to a level that would be easier for her to work through. This needs to be challenging, but it can't be so challenging that it frustrates her, and it will also frustrate you because you're continuously having to pick up the poles, which is what I was having to do. So again, that's why I went ahead and moved them to the ground. On to session 2. This we went ahead and did back inside. Before we started, I added in a K-taping on her legs. As you can see here, this variation, K-tape can help with proprioceptives, which is essentially, imagine closing your eyes. You still know where your nose is. Like you can point and touch your nose. That's proprioception. That is you understanding where your body is in relation to the space around it. So the theory behind using the taping in this way is I wanted to see if I could help her become more aware of where her legs were and see if that created any kind of change for her. And you'll kind of notice these in the video for the fan. When we go to do session 2, when it comes to the snake, at that point, this particular tape started coming off, so I ended up taking off the tape. With this particular tape, bear in mind, it was actually pretty expired. It didn't have a whole lot of stickiness to it. That's again why I ended up deciding to use it here, because I knew it wasn't going to work for a normal K-taping application. I do feel like the tape did provide her a little bit more acknowledgement of where her legs were in space. I also did have these poles raised again. They are approximately 6 to 7 inches off the ground. I have 2 risers underneath there. With this session, I did also opt to just do in hand. I am always prepared to go ahead and do ground driving. However, when it comes to having to pick up the poles, it's a lot easier when I'm doing this in hand, so I don't have to worry about her possibly stepping on a rein. So again, in this particular session, I opted just to do in hand, which is perfectly fine. There's pros and cons to each way of doing it. On to session 3, another ground pole variation. With this, I did go ahead and decide to do ground driving. I did not have them raised. Again, I want to make this her to understand how to place her feet before I add too much elevation, as I think that was a bit too challenging. You will see the K-taping that she has on there. That's kind of like a hip stabilizing K-tape along with a lumbar decompression tape. At the end of this video, I will kind of show you better pictures of what that looks like and kind of explain it, what it does and how I'm utilizing it. On to just a quick showing of long trotting. Again, I'm trying to utilize as much of the arena as possible. Of course, doing this ground driving means I'm doing a lot of jogging, which, isn't such a bad thing. So if you do have the fitness and ability to do this, I do highly recommend it. If she was working under saddle, you can also do this under saddle as well. Obviously, it's a lot easier that way. Essentially I'm taking up as much space as possible, trying to keep as many straight lines as possible. She can get a bit faster than me, so if we get too far out, then I just essentially bring her back in, do a few bending circles, get those lines shortened back up, and then bring her back on out on that long trotting. So generally, I'm doing, probably 3 to 4 minutes of long trotting between a lot of these exercises. Onto the ground pole snake variation. Again, this is the same thing we saw last week, and I broke it down again between 3 different sessions. Again, the 4th session's not shown. So this is the first session. I apologize. I did not realize I was so off with my camera. So I broke up these videos just a little bit so that way you're not waiting to wonder where we are. You can see here I do have these raised. They're about 3.5 inches up. She's doing okay, but we still had at least one pole coming down each time. In session 2, I brought her inside, and again, I did have them raised. Looks like on this one, I did, the same as before with that about 3.5 inches off the ground. It went a little bit better. The weight of the wood posts do definitely help keep them more in line. However, she still struggled, and if the sound was on, you would definitely hear her kind of tapping her legs against the poles. It just happens that these, stayed a little bit better than the previous round. And again, I went ahead and did it in hand. On the 3rd session, I went ahead and just brought them straight to the ground. We are ground driving and working through this, without that elevation. A lot of times you can see if you're watching her feet, like here, I'm trying to get her to reach over with the leg closest to the pole. So I am getting a little more picky regarding where her feet are going, because we really want that stretch across that pectoral muscles and across that shoulder and really kind of broadening out. So watch real close, and you'll see she struggles with getting the right leg to extend out first. When introducing the stretch and climb through, this has 2 different sets of poles to it. The first set is spread about 3 feet apart, with the second set about 2.5 feet apart, with the second set also being raised slightly. I don't have it raised a whole lot on this particular session. Essentially what we are looking at and trying to do is getting her to, again, change her stride lengths between going more lengthening on that first section and then being able to collect herself up and shorten up a little bit. You can see in these videos, she does struggle with that. These are actually 2 different segments that we did. They look practically identical. We ran into the same problem both sets of times. On to the final new exercise of this week. This was the serpentine across a ditch. This technique can be very helpful in stimulating the shoulder muscles, that thoracic sling, and just trying to work on varying effort and coordination. I don't have a lot of video of this because I'm doing it with both hands ground driving, and then you add the video as well. It's a bit challenging. So I will try and get a better video in the future. However, just kind of finding a ditch that's safe, that has a good slope to it, nothing too steep. This is again just going to help them kind of work through the stabilization a little bit. This can help if a horse tends to want to be more dominant on one side than the other, which we do see with Arya on those ground poles, particularly in the snake variation where she's not wanting to reach over as much on the right side. The body work after each session remained about the same, doing neck stretch variations, front leg stretches, hind leg stretches, and carrot stretches. Again, I will make sure to have videos of those. I apologize, I have not gotten to those yet. But again, this is really helping to add to these exercises that we're doing. So you do not want to skip your stretches. This week, after our second session, I also did add a lymph and circulation kinesiology tape application. This one's different than the previous week. I'm using Hetraband's lymph tape, which is that blue tape there. And then I do have the anchors, which are in red. So again, we're trying to just increase some circulation and some movement in this area. These are closer pictures of that hip stabilization variation that I had shown, or that you could see in the third session and I believe second session as well. So this did end up lasting about 4 or 5 days, which was really good considering, she goes out every day, she rolls, and this all stayed really, really well. So this is really focusing on trying to keep her hips a little bit more stable, as I think there is some instability in her SI. And the black strip there is a decompression strip for her lumbar area, just kind of lifting up and creating a little bit more space in that area as well.